Final Word Cricket Podcast. Adam Collins here with Daniel Norcross for the Advanced Hair Studio, the world leaders in hair restoration. Daniel, it's been a big day on many levels here at the Oval in South London. I want you to try and tell us all about it in 30 seconds.
Most unique and extraordinary 10 minutes I think I've ever witnessed in any sporting occasion was the bizarre backdrop to what was another frenetic and remarkable day's cricket. 17 wickets fell, both sides' batting frailties were exposed, and also the frailties of the organisers who did a brilliant job of getting the game on but started the game too late, so bad light arrived too early, so we didn't get all the overs in. Still, it'll probably end in 2 days.
Yeah, I think that's likely. So the numbers that pad that out a wee bit. South Africa sent in very, very good toss to win 48 hours before the test match started for the reasons that we'll document in a moment. All out 118. Ollie Robinson, outstanding. 5 for 49, one of the best spells I've ever seen in England. Anderson 1 for 16. Broad 4 for 41. Leach only had to bowl a couple of overs, and in reply England already have a lead of 36, having reached 154 for 7 when bad light stopped play after 33.4 overs, and Jansen has 4 of those 7 wickets to fall. And as you say, bad light stopped play at about 6:30. A couple of years ago, let's rant to begin. 2 years ago, there was frustration about bad light in test matches being played in September, and the ECB astutely moved everything back to 10:30 in those games that were played in the bubble. I think it was only the last test match, but they made a call that this needed to happen, and they needed to find an extra half an hour, because bad light, you can never get the extra half an hour in at this time of year. And for reasons that I can't understand, it's as though we've forgotten 2020 happened, and we're back to the 11 a.m. start, which means that invariably you don't get the overs in at the back of the day because bad light will almost always stop playing.
Well, it has to. You see, the thing is that the Earth quite reliably moves around the sun the way it does, and sunset here is 7:25. So it's insane that they should think about being able to increase the hours of play to 7:30.
Well,
so today,
it's 7:10 right now, and we're a long way from when cricket could have been played. And in theory, you could play on for 20 further minutes to facilitate the overs, which highlights the absurdity of the whole thing.
I reckon they could just about have played today till 7:15, and actually the sun was out away to our left and shining on the Galladari stand, and they were still out for bad light. So if they consider that to be bad light, then tomorrow at 6:30, if the game's still going on, they'll have to troop off. They won't have a choice because the meter reading's been taken. It's not going to get any better than it was at 6:30 here today, and it infuriates me. Now I want to balance that against the fact that what we saw today was a pretty remarkable effort from all sides actually to get the game on in what have been unique and tough circumstances. I mean, look, that's an understatement. Let's put it that way. The death of the head of state after 70 years on the throne was always going to prove to be a momentous event in this country. Now, I think the expectation had been, even as little as 5 years ago, that all sporting occasions would come to a halt. And in fact, that isn't what's happened. Rugby's happening, hockey's happening, rugby league's happening, cricket's happening. The only thing that isn't really happening is football. But to get that on at such short notice and to try to get a 6th day, which is looking increasingly unnecessary, it's got to be said, because of the way the game's panned out, means that I'm wary about having to go at the organisers. This is something that should have been sorted out at the start of the season. It was always the case that if you play games, county championship matches start at 10:30 for a very good reason, because they play in September an awful lot and they know exactly what's going on. So that was my one gripe with the day.
And just to go back over that a wee bit, like, we whacked the ECB on this podcast quite a bit. That's fine. That's probably our job a lot of the time to, in some journalistic sense, hold power to account, and that's what we do, or try to do. You got to pat them on the back when they've done well. This was an outstanding effort to get this test match back on today, for all the reasons you state, but that extra layer of pressure yesterday when the Premier League pulled the pin for all recreational football, the fact that the expectation, as you rightly say, was that the test match wouldn't continue. On Thursday night, when we were talking about this, nobody thought this test match would be restarting on the Saturday morning. So, deft, diplomatic work from those behind the scenes. Credit to the government as well for not issuing an edict for sport to be off as well. They provided that flexibility to the relevant bodies, and we're here today and much better for it. 17 wickets on a day that was sporting. The surface was extraordinary. I mean, I say extraordinary. That's the wrong.
Been sweating under covers for 2 days.
It's not an extraordinary surface. It's overplaying it. It's not as though it was. But Stuart Broad on television said just before that he felt like, with all his experience, pulling even with Glenn McGrath with 560 63 Test wickets today. He knows what he's doing. That it felt like the day you could take 6 for 10 if you got it right. And he and Ollie Robinson took 9 between them and absolutely got it right after. And we should go back to this too, before we get to the first ball. And we'll have plenty of opportunities to reflect on this, I'm sure, on our various platforms. There was 5 minutes of silence before the minute of silence.
It was truly amazing.
The players were positioned to walk down the stairs in the beds to stand behind us here, and they didn't walk down the stairs. And initially, it's Laura Wright, isn't it, who does the national anthems for the ECB and for rugby as well. As soon as she walked out, everybody stood, remained silent. Then the players came out. About 2 minutes later, then the South African national anthem, and it's all in all its glory, one of the great national anthems.
A cappella. It's haunting. It was brilliant.
Yeah, and the only little murmur you heard was in the English verse of the last verse of the South African national anthems in English. You could hear a few people singing, but that was it. And then the eruption when God Save the King. I mean, it's the first time that's been heard of the sporting event for over 7 decades. It was special. You know, we're no monarchists. You know, we're not. We're not royalists. We're, you know, far from it, indeed. But it was a moment in history to be witness to that. Extremely special. And again, credit to the powers that be to nail that tricky bit this morning before play began.
Well, it was what sort of proved to me that they were right to put it on.
Yeah,
because it was an amazing occasion. I was the test match special box is just above us over there, and. I'd seen the you know, when things are supposed to happen, like the rota.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd nip out a couple of minutes before the minute silence supposed to happen to feel the atmosphere, and everybody was standing in complete silence before a minute silence. I mean, it was, and nobody had been told to do this. It wasn't like in the 100 where you got somebody shouting, you know, cheer, do this, do that, isn't it great? Crowds,
you know, for that.
Well, I might do, but you know, crowds have a habit of behaving like crowds do.
Sure, yeah.
And it was just it was so moving. I mean, as Colo says, I'm not a monarchist, but you could sense this deep well of respect, and it was just remarkable. And then the singing happened, and you know, I welled up a bit.
Yeah, and I think you know it's it was the fact that it's like, again, we'll have a chance to talk about this more probably on the weekly show, but the sense of service and duty and the longevity of the whole thing. It's
shared. It was a shared experience of everybody. That was the thing that was so extraordinary.
I mean, what I'm trying to get to there is it wasn't like an endorsement of royalty or something. No. People were solemn. It was more that everybody here understood what it represented more broadly than their own, you know, predilections.
I'll tell you
politically
what,
or otherwise.
I saw one man eating a bacon sandwich. Absolutely everybody else. They weren't doing this because they were told to in some performative sense.
Yeah.
They were just standing there reflecting. It was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. I stood in the crowd for it. Like the outside press tribunes here at the AOL, as you know, you can kind of pull up right next to the crowd. So, you know, got my camera out as I tend to do. And to be part of something like that. And then even just the singing of God Save the King, it is a little bit jarring hearing that for the first time.
Send him victorious.
Send him victorious. That was the line I thought she might stumble over. I mean, everybody knows you're coming up to God Save the King, but send him victorious. You could easily imagine the scenario where it was send her victorious still, but she managed to stick the landing. I heard her interviewed by our colleague Henry Moran, saying that she had to compartmentalize the entirety of the anthem to ensure that she got every single line right. Muscle memory. When you only hear one song for
her entire life.
Her entire life, indeed, your entire life. So look, and that was the precursor to.
How do you bat, Colo, after that? I mean, that was one of the things I thought. Tricky pitch, yes, against very, very fine bowlers. Ollie Robinson's taken 49 wickets at an average of under 20 now, and the guy at the other end is James Anderson, who was zeroing in on his 665th wicket. Under not grey skies, but it's slightly overcast on a pitch that's got nibble in it, and you've just experienced that 10 minutes. I think I was asking in the box, is that harder to bat or to bowl? It's much harder to bat because
I think so.
You're you must be in a completely different space, and
because normally before a test match, when you're walking out to bat first, you've got to you're in the zone, right?
Yeah.
It would be impossible to be in that kind of zone. Minutes later, because that stretch of time, the formalities took until about 10:20 or 10:57 rather local time.
Yeah.
They're facing the first ball from James Anderson 3 minutes later. That's a difficult adjustment. That's not your normal sort of standing for the national anthem, which to us these days
you blank it out.
Us.
They would mostly blank that out. They'd think about the job at hand. This was something unique in their experience. They won't have experienced anything like it. And for the bowlers, and actually for the crowd, it was strange because, and for the commentators, when wickets fell to start with, when the first 2 wickets fell, there was that knee-jerk, cheer. But when the second wicket fell, it was noticeable. I think, if it had been a sunny morning, totally different circumstances, or even a grey morning for that matter, had 2 early wickets go down, they're 7 for 2 off 3 overs, 4 overs. This crowd would have erupted. They would have sensed something amazing. But there was that still sense of, is it right to be this happy? And it's actually, the crowd took a while over the course of the day to find its feet, really. And they were put through the ringer because South Africa were 36 for 6 in no time. So
just on that point, by the way, the crowd did find their groove.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like an over. There was a moment towards the end of play. I was going to raise this in the Hall of Fame, but I'll do it now. When they had the rope going around with the groundsman, with the rain delay, the groundsman jump over the rope, like they skip over it. Everyone gets involved. Oh, hey! And so it goes. One of the groundsmen tripped over it at one point, and it was brilliant. And the crowd went wild. He got a standing ovation when he was walking back around the ground afterwards. It was just like a normal crowd would be. It's kind of how I remembered when the Duke of Edinburgh passed away last year. We were told on commentary just to basically shut up and just let the cricket do the talking and don't get too involved. 4 hours later, I know it's different gravy when it's the Queen, but everyone just kind of slipped back into normal mode. And Barney Renee made a really good point on Twitter yesterday that if there's one thing the Queen was known for, it was just cracking on and getting on with it. And it felt like the crowd almost honoured that today. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that was a brilliant thing to be part of earlier. Now it's time to just slowly drift back to normalcy.
Yeah, and they got really annoyed when they went off a bad light as well. So
absolutely.
Which is normal too. Which is normal too, exactly. That's exactly what happened. But everybody was sort of finding their feet a little. I mean, on commentary, I think everybody was just you felt somber. It came over in what you were saying. You didn't really feel like shrieking and whooping and hollering as well.
Interesting, right?
And that sort of passed as the day went on, and the game began to develop so quickly that your instincts about what's happening out here. Wickets are just tumbling constantly. I mean, we saw some of the best bowling we've seen. We saw some pretty poor batting at various different points. Not so much on the South Africans actually, but England's performance after tea was not great. The way Root got out, the way Stokes got out, the way Pope got out. Pope was visibly furious with himself. He was the one batter today who actually adjusted to the conditions well, hit 67 off 70 odd balls. It's his home ground. He averaged 90 here before the start of that, so he knows his onions. He was furious, and England threw away a position of real strength. They could have finished the day 30 or 40 runs further ahead and probably 2 or 3 wickets further off. But I'm not complaining because we've been waiting for a really tight game between these two, but first 2 games were walkovers for one side or the other. And to me, it's magnificently poised. You know that England will chase whatever it is that they're going to be asked to chase in a fourth innings.
Well, Broad was saying on telly before that they came here today with one thing in mind. It was get a result. And, it was kind of an odd comment that he made, but I kind of get where he's going with it. He's like, no, we want to win or lose. We don't want to draw. Now, of course, in a 3-day test match or a 3-day match of any variety, a draw is very likely outcome. But they came here today, no. We are going to play in a manner that gets the result more likely one way or the other. We don't want a 1-all series, and look, that's the way they batted. It was relatively cavalier, but they earned the right to do that because they bowled so bloody well. Let's go back to Ollie Robinson, shall we? His first spell today, I picked up a stat from TMS. Zoltz had this with you earlier. I think he was talking to Aggers at the time. His 4 for 21 was the best opening spell to start a test at the Oval since the great Fazal Mahmood's 6 for 53. A spell of 30 overs straight, by the way. In the test they won here, Pakistan in 1954, their first win. Now, that's different because he bowled 30 overs on the bounce, but it puts it in some sort of historical perspective. And Robinson, I know we've got to be a bit careful about overdoing the chat about his body, but since he's returned, he's lean, he's mean, he's quicker, he bowls longer spells, he's consistent, and he just lands it on a handkerchief. And we say that in a cliched way a fair bit, but you look at what Crickviz pulled together on the Robinson spell this morning. It's like it reminded me of the Beehive when Nathan Lyon took 8 for 50 at Bangalore on day 1 in 2017. It's like Lyon's perfect day. Everything he bowled landed on a threatening bit, and so it was for Robinson today. And with his natural variation, with the wobble ball,
with the wobble,
and with the outswinger, right? And then he gets moulded with the tempter.
Yes.
He kind of is the man for all seasons in this country, in these conditions. And I don't think it's long before he's the attack leader. In fact, he might already be de facto. I know Jimmy and Broader have got their roles to play, and Anderson was outstanding at Manchester, but Robinson, 3 innings back into his test career, he's everything.
He's fantastic, and the bounce he gets, obviously he has a second highest release point in world cricket behind Carl Jamieson. I mean, was it Varane the ball he got, where Varane had
What's he going to do with that?
He's done virtually nothing wrong. I was on the commentary with Rams. I said, has he been a bit tentative there? And Rams said, look, he's shown the full face of the bat. He's covered off stump. It has feathered the outside edge. There's nothing Varane can do about that. It's his second ball. Nothing you can do. You've done all the right things and got out. And it was one of those days, I was wondering at one point if this was going to be a little bit like the 60 all out, where actually the pitch didn't do masses, but it did just enough.
Right.
And the opposition just got so unlucky that they got the little feathers, they got the edges to every single one that was there, rather than just getting a bit of luck, just getting one to bounce in front of slip, just miss one, And when they missed it hit the stumps.
I was going to say, then you couple it with balls that are on target, so the delivery from Robinson to knock over Elgar early on through the gate, after beating him outside the other edge earlier in the over. I mean, the ball that knocks over Peterson, albeit shouldering arms, but
scintillating stuff, wasn't it?
I mean, it was just exhilarating for him.
And then Broad after lunch, wasn't it?
Well, it was also Broad before lunch, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
I mean, Broad had 2 spells and got wickets in the first over of both, as if it was foretold. He just came on and immediately was asking the right kinds of questions. And Broad picks up. It was Rickleton initially, wasn't it? And then later on, Mondo and a couple of wickets to finish it off. So he gave himself every opportunity from the outset. Anderson bowled a couple of perfectly presentable spells. What did he take? 1 for 16 from 8 overs without doing anything wrong. On another day, it's Anderson taking 5, but limited opportunities because they had to keep the ball with Robinson and Broad.
Look out tomorrow, by the way, because there could be some great stats on shortest combined first innings in Test history.
Oh, yeah.
Shortest combined first innings of Tests at the Oval.
Yep.
It was one of the 118 is a very rare low score for a first innings at the Oval.
Well, let's go through that. So the first innings of the Test match lasted 36.2 overs at the moment. We're not up to much more than
33,
that.
I think.
33 and change. 33.4. So we haven't even hit the 70 over mark.
The 70 over mark. Yeah. And what really gingerly could happen is we might have the shortest 3-match series in the history of Test cricket, because if you remember, the first Test was over inside 2 days of playing time. The second Test was over in 2.5 days, and there's still every chance that tomorrow could see the end of the game. I don't know.
And England contributed to that with the way they batted. I said before that it's clear they made their mind up. They went at it from
they went
the first
hard.
over. They went really hard.
100 off 20 overs. 100 off 20 overs.
I mean, you look at Rabada's figures: 2 for 78 from 11.4.
Insane.
Rabada's never conceded 78 runs in 11.4.
He didn't bowl
overs.
brilliantly, but England went after him, and Pope went after him really early. Went after pulling him, and something we've seen a lot of this season is coming down the wicket. Pope and Stokes particularly advancing on the bowling, regardless of the pace. And this was hostile. I mean, Rabada was getting to 90. Nortje was consistently over 90. And England's response is to attack. And look, they're ahead. They're ahead of the game. It looks like being a low-scoring match. They've already got a lead of 30 odd, so they'll be happy with that. But wait till both these first innings are over. Tomorrow we might have a whole raft of records for you.
A couple of logical selection talking points. One, how on earth did Marco Jansen not play at Manchester?
Unbelievable.
I mean, he's a
proper bowler.
Serious cricketer. He took the first 4 wickets today, and I thought it'd be fitting on a day of history of this that he'd end up with the first 8 or something, or maybe the whole 10. But a
quick one on him though.
Yeah,
quick
please.
One. His first 28 wickets in Test cricket, only 1 was bowled or LBW. 27 caught. In England, they've all been LBW and bowled.
Brilliant.
Which is, he was bowling at the stumps because he's getting it to swing. He's getting it to swing back into the right hand. If you're doing that from that height with a Duke's ball on pitches that are responsive, you are a handful.
So Lees probably gets a bit of a leave pass because A, good ball, B, because Crawley's struggling and they're not going to change 2 openers at the same time. Crawley goes upstairs, bad review, hitting middle and leg, I suppose. At that stage, you have that prerogative as an opener, whether you should or you shouldn't.
I think Pope actually suggested, he said, you have a look. Because Crawley didn't look that keen, I'm going to say.
So they get to tee at 84 for 2 after 16 overs. With Pope, great start, 38 from 41.
Yep.
Playing similarly to the way he did at Lords on the first morning, I thought, as far as playing well behind point and all the rest of it. Root, a screamer immediately after the tee break from Peterson at third slip. I think he pretty much middled that to third slip. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's that Root shot where he turns around almost to force it through.
He was on his knee. He got so low, he got to chop
sort of
it.
Kim Hughes style. And
that's
flew
right.
to Peterson, so
great catch to away to his right.
Brook on debut looked good until he got out. Rabada taking a catch just over the rope where we are here filming the video. He kind of it was wristy, wasn't it? He kind of
flicky.
Whipped.
A whippy wristy flick.
Yeah. That was Jansen again. Stokes, Nortje. It took them until 74 for 2 to get Nortje on, and it didn't take you long to get a wicket either. And that of Ben Stokes, which was caught in the cordon after Stokes should have been out earlier in the same over when he skied one, dancing.
Went for a slog.
I mean, again, I guess it's kind of reflective of the day we saw that Stokes would do that, and it wouldn't necessarily attract too much attention.
I'm not criticising the way he bats. This is the choice he's made.
Yep, absolutely.
He's done it from the first test of the summer when he advanced on Carl Jamieson, and I rubbed my eyes in wonder. He's doing it to the last. England have won 5 out of 6, and they could well win 6 out of 7. So it is not. I withdraw all judgment.
And Pope was the penultimate man to fall tonight for 67. The Nighthawk Broad. Well, I say Nighthawk. He came in at 8, but he got out trying to pull one off his nose.
That's right.
At about backward square when he made contact, so be it. Pope would be frustrated though. That was catching practice when he probably should have had an eye to tomorrow. And again, that's harsh because he batted so well.
Pace. I mean, he was drawn to it a bit by the pace, and he does it. He does sort of play that shot. And also, I think he was out near the close of play, but I don't think players 100% realise that these hours of play are nonsensical. When they went off for rain, they didn't need half an hour off for rain. It's just that they thought they'd had half an hour because they could extend to 7:30, and no one, as we've said already at the top of the show, actually takes any notice whatsoever of the Earth moving around the sun. I mean, the time is right now 7:31. This is absolutely laughable.
I mean, even admittedly, our ring light did go out halfway through the podcast, but
this is dark now.
Yeah, it's just it's something
this is street lamp dark.
Yeah, they need to look at it before next summer because it's becoming increasingly unsustainable to start Test cricket this deep into the morning at this time of year. Long podcast today. We still get to the Hall of Fame. Final word Hall of Fame for the Advanced Test Studio, the world leaders in hair restoration. advancedteststudio.com/final word for your discount. Get in there, hop on, 15% off. We've made undertakings, Daniel, during the week that you're going to be doing it during the winter, which we can't wait to do. We'll document that on the final word. 1 million people over 30 years have said, you know what, I wouldn't mind having some treatment on my bonds, and they've all came away happy. It's 100% guaranteed service. Why wouldn't you do it? What better time? advancedteststudio.com/final word. Do as Daniel's going to.
Yeah, well, look, and listen to the wise words of Larry David, who, when asked why he didn't believe in prayer, he said, because I'm bald. I did have a word result to that, whether he might hop in and do a bit of this with us. Yeah. And I was promptly told to pretty much to fuck off because he's been working on his look for this long. He's not going to change it up now. He's not going to change it, no. Right, so final word Hall of Fame. We are spoilt for choice for Advanced here today. I was going to talk about the formalities, but we spent 10 minutes off the top discussing that and how well Laura Wright did to not stuff it up, I think to her enormous credit. How about, I'm not sure, did you see my photograph of Elgar getting bowled? I think that is I think you win the Hall of Fame. I mean, just on the basis, if you haven't seen it, jump on Twitter. And I'm not saying I'm any... Don't tell them too much. All I'm going to say is try and find Dean Elgar's off stump. Try and find it. It is one of the great mysteries. And I'm going to give you one clue. It is not obscured by any of the slip fielders. Yes, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. Get in touch with us on the comments on YouTube or on Twitter or on Patreon or on Discord. You know where to find us. The black armband with the stumps as well. I'm not sure if you caught this, but the stumps had black armbands on them today. I didn't actually. I took a photo of that too if you want to see. I didn't see that. You couldn't make it up. I mean, some bits I loved almost everything about today. Yeah. Not sure about the black armbands on the stumps. Well, everyone's trying to do their bit. Can I just add to that? On the day Princess Diana died, of her funeral, I played a game of cricket because they didn't stop league cricket. Wasn't that long afternoon teas to watch the service? I think you've told me the story. Maybe someone else has. Well, I arrived and there was a minute's silence. Both teams lined up, and then the opposition captain turned to me and said, "So, do you have your black bales?" And I said, "What?" Black bales, according to the Surrey Championship handbook, you need to have black bales. You try whipping up a pair of black bales in a cricket club in South East London at 1 minute's notice. Were they black bales today? No, they weren't red bales, though, were they? They weren't the bales you want, the zing bales. They're the green ones, which I get obscured, and I can't see when the bales fly off. Yeah, my last one for today. You'll like this. Ollie Robinson naturally becomes the first England bowler to take a fifer under a king since 1952. The last was a man by the name of Malcolm Hilton. He took fifer at Kanpur in 1952 with his left arm orthodox. Lancashire bowler, played shortly 4 Test before matches. George VI died, because he died on the first day of the next Test match. Correct. Yeah. So they win that Test match. They lose at Chennai, which is Athers had in his piece today for the Times. It's quite fitting that it's a sign of her longevity on the throne that India have never won a Test match without the Queen being there, because of course they go on to win at Chennai after they had the rest day. So again, you kind of get a sense of, they started playing Test cricket 20 years earlier, but that was their first win. Oh, did you hear the other great stat that Ali Mitchell gave? No. That up to the point that the Queen acceded to the throne, there had been something like 340 odd Test matches. Right. Since then, there have been a further 2,100. I think she's been on the throne for something like 80% of all the Test matches ever played.
Very, very good from Ali Mitch. Anything further for the Hall of Fame, or is that your contribution?
I think that's my contribution. I mean, there are a couple of lovely pulls from Ollie Pope, but none of them really. They all pale into its significance on a day like today, really.
Well put. Hey, this has been the Final Word Daily. A fraction longer than usual, but it's been that kind of morning, indeed, that kind of evening as well. advancedstudio.com/Final Word. Thank you so much for their support throughout. If you're ever going to jump on and use their service, now is the right time. 15% off. Jump on the website today. Thank you to our production team. Thank you for listening. If you really like what we do, patreon.com/The Final Word. And we'll do it all again tomorrow at Lords with England. 36 runs in the black. Adam Collins, Daniel Norcross. Good night.
Good night.